Hello, everybody, and it's another week. Today we're talking about cell division. Last week we talked about cells communicating, how we can get, how you get a fight or flight from just a sensory, from like your eyes or your ears, or you have a crush on someone and you turn the corner and they're right there and it makes your body feel that way. You know, and so those are cells communicating with each other. And so here we also have cell division. And that's what all those pictures had to do with. The checkerboard, the feet, scarring, that's an immediate thing that you think about when you have a cut and your body has to heal. So if we look at some of the questions from this week, what is the chessboard for? What does the checkerboard have to do with anything? Why are humans susceptible to athlete's foot fungus? Why do some wounds leave scars? And so we'll go through and answer some of these questions here. And so maybe an easy way to look at this is we've seen a cell, right? And we've seen that different signal inputs, like we were talking about, can go into the cell, you know, and then different outputs will then come out of the cell due to the different inputs. You know, and that might be making hormones or things like that. And then these signals can come from also within the cell. We'll just make that little thing within the cell. And so one of the things inside the cell is cell signaling. And so it can be within or it can come from outside. And so one of the signals is to divide. And we learn a little bit later on today that all the cells in your body, they replace themselves at different times. And so like in your gut, I think it's every 7 days. In your heart is a lot longer. Your neurons, they last your lifetime, so don't mess those guys up. And so what do I mean when cells divide? Maybe an easier way to think about this is thinking about bacteria. Bacteria are cells. And so if we have a single bacteria cell, it needs to grow and divide. And so what's going to happen is this little guy is going to start to divide like this, and then eventually it will end up with 2 separate cells. You know, and then it will have the genetic information from this in both of them. You know, and so you have a single cell right here, you have 1, and then you end up with 2. And then these guys divide, and they each have 2. So now you have 4 down here, right? So this is what happens when someone sneezes in the fruit salad. You know, it goes from 1 cell to 2 cells to 4 cells to 8 cells to 16 cells, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so this is called doubling when it goes from, say, 2 to 4. And so this is doubling. So that's doubling. So why the chessboard? Well, the chessboard is a great example of doubling. One time, there was an emperor, and he wanted to punish this farmer, and he wanted to outwit him, and so he said, "Hey, farmer, make me a deal, and we'll talk about it." And so the farmer said, "Okay, on this chessboard or checkerboard, on the first day I want 1 piece of rice. And then on day 2 I want to double that. I want 2 pieces of rice. And then on day 3 right here, then there's going to be 3. And then there's going to be 4, sorry, because it doubled. And then so now there's 2, and then there's 4, and so then here there'd be 8, and then 16, 32, 64, 128 is right here. By the time you get to like right here, it's somewhere around 268 million pieces of rice. And by the time you get here, it's such a large number that it's bigger than Mount Everest would be the pile of rice. And that is what doubling is about. Doubling each time the population can double. And so that's why the chessboard is on there. And so you can look up chessboard rice puzzle, and it will go into a little bit more detail. But it's a pretty cool way to think about things doubling. And that's what cells do. They're going from a single cell to 2 to 4 to 6 I mean, not to 6, but it goes from 2 to 4 to 8 to 16, and so it would keep going up like that. And so, but because if we remember on the inside we have genetics, and so if we have a piece of DNA, if we have genes from mom, and we'll make genes from dad yellow, then before this happens, we have to make an identical copy of each of these. So we would end up with 4 of these in here, and then it would split, and then you would end up with 1, 1, 1, 1. So that genetic material is copied exactly the same way for each one of these. That is why your feet stayed looking the same. You have genes that code for your feet. And so that's why your toes stay the same, and all of a sudden you don't get a toe growing out the side of this. Or all of a sudden this one doesn't start growing crazy and long. It's because you have genes, and so when those cells go from 1 to 2, because your skin cells, they can die every 14 days. And so these need to be replenished every 14 days. And so you get this cell, and that came, and remember, one came from mom, forget which one, and one came from dad, and then they came together. This would be the sperm, and this could be the egg. But these two came together and they formed one cell. Now they have to make a copy of this every time they duplicate, and then they can read the genes within those chromosomes so they can make the toe look exactly the same, or your nose isn't going to start changing like a different nose. And that's why. And so there's a complete replicate of genes when they get passed down. So there's a complete replicate. And so let's say mitosis, complete replicate. Complete replicate. I hope that makes sense, because that's really important, and that's why even though your cells are replacing themselves, that's why you continue to look like you do, because there's a complete replicate of the genes that get passed on. Now, in the case of like a cut, like you get a cut like this. This is a cut. It's bleeding. And so if this was your hand or your finger, some of these cells are dying and need to be replaced, right? And so we just learned about the doubling thing, and that we'll get a complete set of genes on each of those. But if you were to sew this thing up, you would get a needle and thread and you would sew like this. right? And then you'd pull it shut, right? And then maybe you'd even go back through this way. And then you'd pull it shut, and then it would pull that shut. Well, that's when your body has a cut. Remember, there's cells all along this thing, and so we learned from the cell communications that the cell is disrupted, and so it's going to produce and make a protein called collagen. Collagen. And collagen is a protein. Your hair is made of protein. Your fingernails are made of protein. And so it's a protein kind of like those. And what it's for is it makes scar tissue, which kind of acts like this. So collagen is like a stitching material. And it's a protein. This is an A too, by the way. That's A-G-E-N, collagen. And so collagen, that's what scars are made up of, is collagen. And collagen is a protein. And so when you see these fingernail, as it's just the nail growing back, which is made of keratin, but then the wound starts to fill in also, and there will be probably some scar tissue. And what is the scar tissue? The scar tissue is collagen. But regardless, the cells would have to go through, they would have to start replicating themselves in order to fill in the gap. But they can fill in the gap because they have a perfect genetic instruction manual on how to do that. So, that is all. So I hope you guys learned a lot. Bye.